TikTok, it's time to rock, ladies and gentlemen. It's a special show here on Sunday in New Zealand, Saturday where Brodie is. Let's just call it a weekend show. We'll just keep it simple, Brodie. What do you reckon?
Yes. As long as it ends in a day. It's a weekday.
It's good to see you, brother. It's always a pleasure catching up with you. Is this the third time you've been on the channel?
Yes, I guess. Yeah, because the Christmas show. We did the Christmas show.
Yeah. The Christmas show was amazing. Was fantastic. That was that was great. And I got to tell you, I had a few conversations with some of the people that were on the show, and they were going, "Oh my gosh, how many amps? How many amps has Brodie got?" And I said, "You know what? We're going to do a gear show, and this isn't a gear show, ladies and gentlemen, because Brodie's probably going to have to get more organised for us to do a gear show. But I promise you, we'll have a gear show coming up. We're just talking about a few ideas in the green room that we want to share with you guys to get your opinion, but certainly a gear show. We did one show together, Brodie, where we spoke about Clapton Strats, and that was a fantastic show, brother.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun. And actually, since then, I've found a real gem.
Oh, what do you got?
This is a fold-out poster from like a 1987 or 88 guitar magazine that I had hanging on my wall that I forgot my mom had sent to me. And the back of it is all an article about the Clapton Strats when they first came out.
Wow.
It's like, it was pretty mind-blowing to read it. Like, I remember, this is exactly what, it's like getting in the DeLorean and typing in the flux capacitor date of 1987, and all of a sudden you're there.
Isn't that remarkable that, we have those bits and pieces around that we still continue to keep? And I did a show about a year ago, a tour through my Van Halen magazines, Brodie, that I've had, going back to the early 1990s, 95 and beyond. Yeah. But certainly a lot when Balance came out. But I agree. It's one of those great things when you find something like that, and you know where that poster was exactly in relation to where your bed was, because you laid there and you were looking at that poster when the music was playing.
Yeah, the issue of the magazine that you cut it out of, and I wish I still had all the photos from like the late 80s or early 90s of Van Halen. The inside of my locker at school, the covers of all my books, it was covered with Eddie Van Halen, and there's some Clapton stuff in there too. But that was the era. That was the Van Halen thing. And I've cut most of those magazines up, but I think there's still some of them, the pieces laying around that we're actually cleaning out my mother's house, and I found some of those. So I've been gathering them. But my Clapton stuff, for whatever reason, I've not, cut it up, but I've got concert programs, from way back that, a lot of them I got, but I've also gone on like eBay and, and bought those. But the Where's Eric magazines, there's still about 10 or 15 of them that I don't have, early ones. And I'm always trying to find them, but they're just not out there. And then every book you could think of, little special DVDs that have come out over the years, and just I've got a whole wall of just my books of things like that.
Fantastic. And again, we've got some amazing people in the chat. I'm going to do a shout out soon to them, Brodie. But this music thing that's caught us. It's about the music. Obviously, it's about the guitars and the gear and trying to play and replicate this music, this sound that motivated you when you were a young guy. But it's also collecting the memorabilia, that wanting to know, especially in the magazines. We've spoken about this a lot of times. The magazines were the only way for a long time that you knew anything about the guitarist you were following, Brodie, because there was no internet back then.
Yeah, and I kind of wish I'd had YouTube back then, but in a way, I miss how special it was to wait for that magazine each month and to stumble on something, an actual record or an actual international article that somebody else had. Now it's so easy just to jump online and find stuff, and
Sure.
it's the hunt's gone in terms of that kind of thing. It was every month you had with guitar for the musician, there were 4 songs, that
Sure.
you would get the tablature for, so you knew, that whatever it was you had free tab. Like, wow, I'm gonna learn this song even if I don't like it because it's here, and you've got access to it. And now, I mean, you can go online and look up anything you want. And I think it kind of, I don't know if people do it as much anymore because they could, but it's there are some pretty killer players coming out now, and you see them on YouTube. And if I'm trying to learn something, I usually just go onto YouTube and see if somebody else has already learned it and if they've done a tutorial. And those are good too. But I do miss that ceremonial going to the bookstore and getting the magazine from the rack and having it and reading it for a long, long time. You know.
PJ
So.
in the bed wants to know, is that Clapton?
No, it's his grandpa.
Good to see you, PJ in the bed. Thank you for jumping in and spending a bit of time with us. While we're talking about people and comments in the chat, we'll do a bit of a shout out to Brodie. We've got very, very good friend of the channel, Holly Lewis here, who was with us on our Christmas show. Good to see you, Holly. Jimmy V from the 5150 show is here.
Yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, go and have a look on the channel. We've got Simon Hosford coming on to talk about his preparation and his gear that he's going to do at the Melbourne Guitar Show. He's doing a Malmsteen album where they're going to play it all the way through. So there's no Van Halen on the 5150 show. Jimmy's going to join us. John Conklin's going to join us, and I'll throw the invite out to Brodie. If Brodie's got some time, he can pop in, and we're going to listen and be spellbound by Hoss talking about Malmsteen. Greg Roberts is in the chat too. Very good friend. Janice Lala, thank you for joining us. Jimmy Ray Hawkins is here. You guys are awesome. Who else have I missed? I'm going all the way up. I think that's everybody in the chat. We've got 9 people watching us. If you want to say hi to Brodie, if you got any questions for Brodie, fire them through and we'll do the best that we can. Basically, what we're going to do on this show is I've got some questions that I want to ask Brodie, a continuation of the first show that we did, just to give you guys a bit of a background on what Brodie is and who he is as a guitar player and a music fan. And we're going to talk about a show that we're going to probably do together monthly, Brodie. And we're going to nail the date down, but we're going to talk about Brodie's experiences, Brodie's thoughts, and Brodie's ideas of the famous Bino album, Brodie.
Yeah, one of few things that's older than me.
I think for Clapton nuts like us, starting off with that album, and we've got a few shows on the channel where we've discussed that. We've gone through and ranked that. But I think for Clapton nuts and British Electric Blues fans generally, Brodie, I think that's the album certainly where, for obvious reasons, the Gibson and the Les Paul, the Gibson and the Marshall sound, that's basically where it started in a nutshell, don't you think?
Yeah, you wonder, would the Burst be the thing it is now if it weren't for that? That was it. That was the beginning of it. And I think I'd want to ask some of the other guys that are more experts on the Marshalls, but I suspect it's similar. Would Marshall be what it is today too? I mean, I think other people would have had I think it would have happened, somehow, but I don't know if it would have been as big. But I really don't know if that burst thing would have been what it is today if it wouldn't have been for the Bino record.
Look, I'm just going to add a comment on that. And this is one of the great things about what we do here on this channel. Everyone has an opinion. No one's right or wrong. But I kind of agree with you, Brodie. I think this is definitely, clearly, obviously, the point in history. And I like that fact, though. At least we can all go back and say, well, if there is a defining point, where is it? So 9 out of 10 guitar players or music fans that like our type of music will say this album is where it started.
Well, and other guys that have had the bursts. I mean, you read about, Peter Green and Gary Moore and, even Jimmy Page, but Joe Walsh and that kind of thing. They're the ones, they're primary sources that make the same comment.
They say it themselves. Good point. Good point. Peter Green, who's very, very dear to this channel and everything that he's done, he said it himself. He went out and got a 58 and a Marshall because he was a Clapton nut.
Yeah. And of course, there was a smaller group of them that were, that they were all pals at the same time. But, Jeff Beck ends up with one. Keith Richards ends up with one. I mean, these guys are all, and of course, Clapton gets Lucy for George Harrison. So, he brings it to the Beatles. So the Beatles were kind of in that circle too, but all because they were pals like everybody on this channel. It's like, hey, have you played the new, pick something. If you played the new EVH 5150 that came out, and now all like 8 or 10 of us go out and buy one, and it becomes a thing, and then the rest of the world, it was a pretty magical, pretty special thing. I don't know that ever happens more than once, in those kind of things. So.
Yeah, that's a good point. We've got Robert, we've got Bob here in the chat as well, the author of Fleetwood Mac Live in Chicago, the Chess album book that he did with Jeff Leventhal. They are performing tomorrow. It's all on our social media links. If you're a friend of the channel, it's on All About Peter Green's Fleetwood Mac Facebook, and also our All About the Blues Facebook page, that link. If somebody can do me a favor, if somebody can find that link and put it in the comments now where they can get tickets for that gig, that would be great. Hugh Caldwell's here too, Brodie. All the way from Scotland. He's going to join us later. It's Brad's birthday today, so Brad's not doing ranking the tracks with us later. He's got today off because he's celebrating his birthday, so Hugh is joining us to do ranking the tracks.
Happy birthday, Brad Cook.
Yeah, the brother. Yeah. 39, I think.
Oh, wow. Wow. Oh, that's crazy.
Yeah. No, when you consider, Brodie, when you consider that he had a stroke a year ago.
Yeah, that's crazy. I mean, he seems normal now, which is great,
Back playing, which is his life.
Yeah. It's I know a number of people that after they've had it, there's just something not quite there, so thank God he's back, he's Brad. So
yeah he told us, he said he was lucky. He was really, really lucky because his work colleague recognized and knew what was happening. So that's so apparently that's because whatever time, that shortness of time was crucial, was critical. So
yeah,
So a lot of people wishing Brad happy birthday. So we'll do another big shout out to Brad later when we go live. Happy birthday, Mr. Cook. Brodie, so like I said to you before, we touched base. We did a Clapton show. We spoke about Clapton Strats and how you have a special fondness for these great guitars. You spoke a little bit about how you got into music. I suppose what I'd like to do is just get a little bit more information from you about, other musical interests that you had around the same time. Clearly you've indicated to us at the Christmas show that you're a Van Halen nut too. Surprise.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That was junior high school and high school, and trying to do all that, and I sort of abandoned it for whatever reason. I just ended up sort of going into this classic rock thing, in college especially. So it was, I didn't stay the path, but it's fun to knock the dust off of that stuff. To sit down and turn the gain all the way, as high as it'll go and play. Of course, this being the 45th anniversary of Van Halen 1, but to try to hack it hack a riff or two from Eruption or Ain't Talking About Love or Running with the Devil or something. That's still a fun place to go back and do. But some of these guys like, Jim and these guys, they know it. Like it's them. It just comes out, and I wish I could do more of that.
Yeah, look, I agree, and I think that's a good point that you made. A guy like Jim who has just nailed it, and has this package, that he has, and celebrates this music with this package, and other people, Brodie, are inspired by it. Is a fantastic thing. But the point that you made about how guitar players when they were younger discover Van Halen and Eddie and then go on and pursue other music interests but still have this fondness for Van Halen. It's remarkable how many people I meet in real life. I at work I met this guy who's a jazz guy. He picked up one of my guitars at work and he's just playing these beautiful jazz chords. It's in this jazz quartet. They play at a few venues here in town, and we got talking, and it turned out that he was a Van Halen nut too when he was 18 years old.
Yeah, that was a thing. How do you, that there was the day before that record came out, and there's been every day since, and it's like, wow, it was a thing. It was. I've heard a number of guys say, Van Halen saved us from disco, and it was definitely hey, here's something new, kind of a thing, and thank God, what a fun. How many people are inspired to play because of what Van Halen did, what Eddie Van Halen did for the guitar.
Yeah, I agree. I discovered Van Halen when I was in high school. 81, 80, listening to that album that you mentioned, Eruption. I was in a school field, portable deck. My friend Garth Blomfield said, "Here, check this out," and he played that solo, and then You Really Got Me after that. And I remember Brodie thinking, I couldn't. I remember walking back to class being dizzy.
Yeah, and and the album covers were mesmerizing too. There was something about that logo, and in the pictures of all of them, but especially him holding that that guitar up, and it was like that one image represented what was coming out of that thing, and it just like, wow,
Yeah.
And then and every record after that, I remember being really disappointed when Fair Warning came out because there were no images of the band on it. I'm like, I want to see pictures of whatever, Van Halen 2, still had some. Of course, the Bumblebee was on the back of it, and Women and Children First. But then Fair Warning came out, and even Diver Down. I'm like, in 1984, it's like, where's the band? I mean, there was such a that huge drum kit, all the speakers everywhere. It was just there was an image you just wanted to see, with all that, and it made you want to. Of course, everything. If you knew there was going to be a red and white striped guitar available like it is today, I mean, if you would have had one of those back then, you would have been the greatest kid in the neighborhood with one. And I saw some pretty bad hatchet jobs with guys that would electrical tape them and brush paint on them. They look terrible, but hey, it was inspiring. I never did that because I can't bring myself to alter anything like that. So
awesome. We've got J Master 202. Thank you for joining us, J Master. If you are new to the channel, please subscribe to us, and we'll subscribe back to you if you're building your channel. Interesting point that you made about Fair Warning, and I want to talk to you a little bit more about that, because the point that you made is exactly a conversation I had here at Christmas time with a couple of my friends. We're talking about who haven't been on the channel anyway. That they were talking about, they found out that I'm part of this YouTube channel, and so I showed them what we do. And anyway, one of my friends, Eric, he's not Eric Clapton, Eric Fassler's his name, is a music fan too, and he saw the amount of Van Halen videos that we had done, Brodie, on this channel. And he mentioned when he bought Fair Warning 2 when it first came out. And he only bought it, he said, because a friend down the road said it's got the best guitar, it's got the best guitaring ever. And he didn't want to buy it, Brodie, because it didn't have any photos of the band, because when you took an album home back then, it was, as Brodie said, it was important to pick something up and have photos, even if it was a cat or a dog or something, something to look at. But it was an interesting album cover. And we had this conversation. I wonder how many people at that time perhaps didn't buy the album because it didn't have that marketing appeal, Brodie.
Yeah, I don't know, because at that point, clearly everybody, it was Van Halen was already a thing, big time, and I don't know. I can't remember. I was trying to think how old I was when I got my first, what first Van Halen, album, or it might have been a cassette actually, at that point, but I ended up having like Van Halen 1 and 2 on an 8-track, and
sure,
it was, everybody knew what it was at that point. Women and Children First were out, and then Fair Warning. I think the anticipation of Fair Warning was probably as big as ever. I mean, that's the one all your diehard Van Halen guys, that's the record they all love.
Yeah,
there's a darkness to it that they're really, really drawn to. Mean Street and Unchained, and there was a thing about that one. But I'm trying to remember if I bought I might have bought Van Halen 2 on cassette. That might have been the first one, because I had heard actually it was the first. I think it was the first one because I had already made a copy of a neighbor's Van Halen 1. So I'm like, okay, I already have this one. So, Dance the Night Away. And that was the song that was kind of going, and like, I'll buy this one. And then I think I got Women and Children First, and then Fair Warning. And you go to the Kmart or whatever it was. And they were all cassettes at that point.
Well, while we're talking about Van Halen, let's just continue to. So I've got to ask you this question, and I don't know, ladies and gentlemen, the answer to this question. So we're all going to find out. 84 comes out, Jump, Panama, this huge album. David Lee Roth leaves. You hear the band is in limbo, and then there's talk of this new band coming out with the band coming out with a new singer, another album. Give us your thoughts on this critical period of Van Halen history. Share those thoughts with us, please.
I was over the moon when I found out Sammy Hagar was going to be in Van Halen. I was a huge Sammy fan before,
Okay.
and because he was I had family from the Bay Area, California, and there was a scene out there with a lot of bands, Montrose and Gamma and Y&T, and Sammy was just an icon. Everything.
Oh, okay.
He was. So, Standing Hampton and Three Lock Box and, of course, VOA when it came out, but then all the, Trans Am, and I had already been really drawn, to that. And I'm like, that would be awesome, and because there was also, I remember when that first record, when 1984 came out, and I remember my dad making a comment. He goes, that's probably the first Van Halen song that I really like that one. He'd listened to all of it before because he had played and he knew that this was like kind of the thing, coming out. But and for whatever reason, this is just goofy. My mom didn't like David Lee Roth. Like, she thought he was, but not from a musical standpoint. She just like, oh, he's a rascal, or he's a bad character. It's like there was something, about him that she really didn't like. But Sammy Hagar was a known thing to her for whatever reason. So I was excited about it. And then, but for whatever reason, there was this, sort of side benefit that my parents are kind of into this new Van Halen, So it's like,
Yeah.
Hey, if we're driving somewhere, I probably got a shot at them playing this stuff while we're driving.
Yeah. I always find it an interesting thing to ask, and we're quite lucky when we do the 5150 show because, and I know the hosts on the 5150 show, so I know this for real, and we're not just saying it. And we're here for the music, for Eddie Van Halen, and I've said this before, Brodie. When I first discovered Facebook groups on Facebook, I remember posting, I was in my vehicle and I remember posting 2 photos of the CDs that I had at the time in my van, and one of them was Carnal Knowledge and the other one was OU812, and I posted 2 pics of me holding these CDs saying, playing these now. And I'd been familiar with Facebook groups, Brodie, for a little while, and I posted these. And man, I was not prepared for the avalanche of abuse and swearing and I've mentioned it before on this channel, and I was just blown away by it, by people. And it wasn't until then that I realized, especially in America, that there's such a big division of Hagar and David Lee Roth fans, Brodie.
Yeah.
Blew me away.
Yeah, and that's like, which Van Halen era, and there were 3 of them. Don't forget Gary Sharon. But,
correct.
It's like saying a Telly's better than a Strat, that's better than a Les Paul, or a hammer's better than a screwdriver, or a wrench is better than a whatever. They're all a tool, or they were all their own thing. Why is one better than another, or why hate one and not another? I enjoyed the old stuff being covered by Sammy.
Sure.
There was more musicality to Van Halen with Sammy Hagar, and but Roth, that was a thing, that it was. Thank God we got both of them, all 3 of them. So.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that's one of the things I think that we have to remember. And I think it's softened a little bit. Brodie, we didn't have a Van Halen show on this channel at all. We were just talking British Electric Blues, and then Eddie passed away. and then Brad and I, found out that we were Van Halen nuts, and we thought we'd just go live and do a tribute show, talking about Van Halen. So it's kind of grew from there with Eddie's passing, and I'll be upfront and honest, the Van Halen shows that we did helped grow the channel, Brodie. We got people watching and people contributing, opened up a whole new social media spectrum for us. We got subs, and it worked well. But one of the interesting things though about Eddie's passing is that toxicity that we had beforehand has generally filtered down a little bit now, and that's not a bad thing, because at the end of the day, for all of us, it was always Eddie. And to see the progression, and again, I'm going to stick up for Sammy Hagar. This is where Eddie wanted to go with his music at the time.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, he was. I think it was time for a change. And I think Eddie was going to go there anyway. I mean, look at 1984.
Correct.
And I think he was the captain of that ship, and he was gonna he was charting a new course. And I was really glad to hear, after, oh, there's Patrick. I gotta, if for all the gearheads in this thing, if you really want to do a gear like deep dive, that PJ and the Beard channel, unbelievable. Like they just did a shootout of like the Analog Man versus the MXR thing, and the Timmy versus the MXR Timmy. I mean,
wow.
It's really, I geek on it, and I'm not even, a pedal guy really, but they kind of turned me into one. But they do reviews on all kinds of gear, and it's really interesting too, because they're both very different players, but when they come together, there's this thing, Patch, like this, the PJ of the thing is like Larry Carlton and the Andy Summers and more of the jazzy kind of thing. And then the Beard, Jason, is like the more of the Southern rocker, kind of the Grateful Dead, the Fish, kind of guy. So they cover all the gamuts, but it's really interesting. So any of the gear folks, tune into that one. That's a good one.
They are, ladies and gentlemen, on our channels page. When we reached out to Brodie, they're on there. So if you haven't subscribed to them, please do. If you're watching on a replay and you're too lazy to do that, I'll attach a link to that channel on the description here, as well as links for you to reach out and touch base with Brodie as well. So Brodie will pass on to me his social media links as well. So reach out and connect, because that's what we want to do here on this channel. We're about connecting and helping each other. And if you can't rely on other friends through social media to help do that, well, why have you got a social media account in the first place?
Yeah. Okay, so what was the Van Halen question? I kind of forgot that now.
Did someone ask a question in the chat?
No, before I elaborated on the PJ and the Beard.
So obviously, we found out, Roth was leaving, and then it was like, oh my gosh, and then all of a sudden you hear Sammy, and it's like, and then this album comes out. Yeah, your thoughts are, that 5150, yeah.
Well, and I loved all of it. I loved that one. I loved OU812. For me, the Carnal Knowledge record was like they hit a plateau. I mean, that one was, that was the 5150 amp. That was the Ernie Ball guitar. There was something like a whole new level, with that record for me. I love Pound Cake, Top of the World, Run Around, Right Now. It was like so many. I think it was like the perfect 316. To me, that's the one. I know
Sure.
A lot of guys are, Van Halen 1 is Van Halen 1. Then there's the Fair Warning, admirers. for me, then that carnal knowledge one was like that next. But then a lot of the guys, balance is a thing, with a lot of them, and it is, and that's really cool when something resonates with people, like that. But that carnal knowledge one was amazing, and I was going to say this too before we got into it. I was happy to read all of the, after Eddie had passed, people like one. I think Michael Anthony's just been a class act the whole time. I mean, that guy couldn't be any classier if he tried. And but I was happy to hear, that Sammy and Eddie had made amends, apparently before Eddie had passed, and that was good. I wish it would have happened sooner. I mean, I think that could have been the biggest thing, for Van Halen to come back. I think it would have been much, much bigger than anything they did with Roth. So
Yeah.
But I'm also really thrilled that it, look what it launched for Wolfie, who is ridiculously talented.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I mean, you could wish and look at different scenarios, but it sounds like there were some amends made, and we got all this. It's all still here, and the whole Mammoth thing. Now I'm excited to watch what goes on in that camp, with him doing everything, with Wolfgang doing all that.
I just reading some of the comments in the chat, but look, I don't want to detract away from the seriousness of the points that you're making, Brodie, because look, I agree with you, and I think, and I have to remind people, we're just fans sharing our opinions. That's all we're doing on this channel, and you're free and welcome to agree with what we say or disagree. No one's going to get upset. No one's going to get upset here. It's just we're just shooting the breeze. But Brodie, I suppose the point for me is, and we discussed this a couple of times with John and Jimmy, and the time where Van Halen could have been doing something and they weren't doing anything. That long period of time, was a little bit frustrating. The last 5150 show that we did, I got John and Jimmy to talk about their thoughts about Sammy's post saying that they are remastering the albums he did with Van Halen. You got some thoughts on that? On any remasters that they do with Hagar?
I'd rather listen to the old version. I mean,
okay.
I'm interested to hear it, but when I'm curious to hear, there's a part of me that's like, it's like touching up the Mona Lisa, like, this is fading a little bit here. Let's put a little, and I don't know. And there's a part of me too that sometimes I've listened to remastered things before, and it's like, I don't hear a big difference, so if sonically, if something changes, great, I'll be interested in it. If it's for a marketing purpose, I've listened to, I've here a few examples, some ZZ Top stuff that's been put out over the years that's been remastered, like LaGrange, and sonically, those are two really different things. And it's interesting, but I still love that old version, and I think I want to hear it the way I first heard. I want to listen. I want to hear that first impression. I don't want to hear a different take on the studio. I don't want to hear the take on the same recording. If it's a live version or if they record it differently or do something a little differently, great. Then that's a different thing. But to go back and remaster Love Walks In, I don't know that I want to hear that. I want to hear what made me love it in the first place.
before I respond to that, I just want to do a shout out to one of the co-hosts of the channel, Simon Williams, who's driving back from a gig. Good to see you, brother. We'll be seeing Simon in about 7 hours' time, along, as I said, ladies and gentlemen, with Hugh. So get some sleep, Rock Professor. We need you on your A game. Brodie, look, I'm going to agree with you, but I'm going to disagree with you. I'm going to agree with you, not necessarily because I want to hear a new version of these songs that you and I and everybody are familiar with. I want to hear anything else that they're going to release, like we got with the Giles Martin remasters of the Beatles, the 4 or 5 that he's done already, where they gave us some of the demos and some of the, some of the other versions of the songs that they had, so that we can, and we got that with Jimmy Page too, from that perspective. It will be very interesting. But if they're just going to do a remastered album and not have anything new, if you know what I mean, well, I'm not too interested in that. But if they're going to have 20 demos or 20, you know what I'm talking about, painting a picture.
If there are songs or versions of songs that were never released, that's new material.
Sure.
To me, then bring it. I'd love to hear that.
And that's what I'm hoping for, that they're going to do. If we get that, so cross fingers. And we've always said this too on the channel, Brodie. Rock and roll's a business. The Beatles, as I said, are doing that with their repackaging and remastering. Page has been remastering his albums for Led Zeppelin for how many years? There's 3 or 4 versions of it out there, you know. So
yeah. And if there's stuff that hasn't been released, I would love to hear some of that stuff, and even I'd love to hear Mammoth. I suspect there's some stuff in there that Wolfie might even go, let's keep what's here and finish it. There have to be snippets and nuggets of unfinished things that I could see him, taking a hold of and making it a thing. That would be really cool.
Yeah, and Jimmy's making this comment here. He's not holding his breath on anything new.
Yeah, Alex, I mean, he seems to be the absent one in all of this, and it's, whether stated, implied, or otherwise, sort of the break on all of it.
Yeah. It'll be an interesting period for us to sort of hang out. I see Holly's also made a comment too, Alec, and you mentioned it before about Wolfgang being a tremendous musician, Brodie. So apparently his second album's in the can, so that's going to be interesting to hear that album.
Yeah, and he played everything on this one too.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty sure I've been following that correctly. If I'm wrong, Jimmy or Holly, somebody, correct me, but I think that's right.
I'm 90%. I'm 99% sure you're right. I've heard that too. So clearly a talented guy. Have you noticed too that Clapton's record companies are coming out with repackaging? So there was a new package of Clapton albums that came out. I think it's the Reprise years that he did. The mid-1990s albums have been re-released in vinyl.
No, and I think like Pilgrim was part of that. Yeah, I saw that. It would be great to get them, but I don't know. I feel like I've got every. I don't know. I've been very unceremonial about vinyl in a long time, and I still love it. But I don't know. When stuff like that's come out, I've never gone for it. But it is it's great to see it, released. Some of those records probably were never records. They were just on CD or maybe not even tape. I don't even know if Pilgrim was on tape. That might have just been a CD. By that time.
I think I have seen it on cassette, but I think the point that you make is correct, Brodie. Clearly, vinyl is taking off. My local store. It's remarkable the change in my local store. It was just full of CDs 5 years ago. 4 aisles of CD, four corridors, alleyways of CD. Now there's only one. And 3 of vinyl. It's remarkable.
Yeah. I'm sort of afraid to get really into that because I might get stupid. Be like, let's go to the. I'll be like I was when I was a kid again. You'd earn, $5 or $6, and I'd want to go buy a new cassette. Like, I can buy the whatever. And it was fun then too because my parents, but mostly my dad, we'd all listen to we'd all listen to the same things. So we'd even get to, why don't you buy this one and I'll buy that one. And it was his way of teaching me to, save for different, my dad was sponging it off of me, but it was, why don't you get this and we'll keep this one in the thing. And we would record things, to have a version in, he had an old van, and then we'd have something in, we could take somewhere else with us. But there was also the records when you had, an image that was that big, and then when you unfolded it, it got even bigger. Like Frampton Comes Alive might be one of the most iconic, record covers like that. I miss that kind of thing. Yeah. Where it was actually a piece of art or it was images of the band. I used to go into the record store just to look at the album covers.
I'm going to share this thought with you guys, if that's okay. So a lot of you will be familiar with Carl, who started this channel with myself a few years ago, and he's been on as a guest host on a couple of shows. Anyway, Brodie, Carl has a huge vinyl collection. Over 1,000 albums, and Carl got into record trading when he was in the States, and when he came back for a lot of highly sought after vinyl albums as a hobby. And it's interesting because when him and I touched base again, it was interesting getting some ideas and some thoughts from him. So here in my hometown, they have there's a club of people, and some of these people spend up to $50,000 New Zealand dollars on their record system, on their sound system. Yeah. No, and they have what they call vinyl parties, where they'll go around to people's different places and they'll sit there and they'll sit there and they'll listen to an album and they'll dissect the sound and stuff like that. And I remember saying to Carl, really? And he goes, yeah. He said, I did that a couple of times, but then I got out. And I said, why is that? And he said, Andrew, if I'm going to spend an hour talking to somebody, I want to be talking about the music, the band, the guitar playing, the drumming. I don't want to hear about the frequencies and whether or not if you put this needle on, Brodie, or had this subwoofer, or had that. Yeah. And I said, I get it. Yeah, let's talk about the music.
Yeah, they're stereo guys. Not as much musicians.
Yeah.
Which is also great. I mean, they're the non-musician gearheads.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, we're not going to knock them, because if you're going to spend $50,000 on a sound system and know the audio differences between Dark Side of the Moon and the Layla album, that's great. But if you don't know who's on the Layla album and you don't know who the guitar player is on Dark Side of the Moon, I know what camp I'd rather be on.
Yeah, and I heard a pretty recent review or an interview with Steve Lukather, and it might have been on a Rick Beato um, video. In fact, I think it was, and he had talked about, back in the day, people would say, "Hey, I just got the new whatever record, and come on over, let's listen to it." It used to be a really ceremonial thing. I don't know why I remember this, but the old show Three's Company, with
Yeah,
the I remember on one of the episodes, Jack Tripper making the comment, "Yeah, I just got the new Frampton album. We're all going to get together and listen to it." And that was in a TV show. But Lukather made a comment. They were talking about one of the Steely Dan records, and he had said, a bunch of them went over to the house and, dropped the needle and listened. And he's talking about it from a musician standpoint. Wow, I heard this Larry Carlton thing, and I heard, might have been Asia was the record they talked about, but still, it's like everybody kind of gathered, and you sat in the room and you listen, and I could see them all looking at each other, going, like, and then it gets done, play that again, and then there was probably conversation about. I wonder how they recorded that. I wonder what mic was on it. I wonder what amp they used. I wonder what. And when you hear these guys in interviews, that those are the questions they want to know. It's like, what amp was that? Or
yeah.
what guitar did you have on that? And that's just what musicians want to know. I remember getting the old. I'd read all the liner notes, which musicians played on the tracks. Where was it recorded? And to try to hear like Elise Sklar, I remember especially like Phil Collins records and Richard Marx records and those guys, Tim Pierce and Lee Sklar and Mike Baird, was one of the big drummers, session drummers there at the time too. And of course, Lukather and Porcaro were, any of the Porcaros, Jeff Porcaro and Lukather were all over everything. I used to really get interested in that. Who played on it? And in fact, I remember one time on a Richard Marx record called Rush Street, because I'd always listen to those just because of the production. I mean, they were great songs and I loved them, but there was a remarkable production level on those things at the time too. And I remember hearing that album Rush Street, and a song came on, and the drums, it's like, wait a minute, that sounds like Motley Crue.
Mm-hmm.
Sure enough, Tommy Lee played drums on that one track. You could just hear that, and I couldn't wait to read the liner notes to see who it was, because it wasn't whoever else played on him. Sure enough, it was like he had a sound. Tommy Lee can sound like Tommy Lee a lot, like Alex Van Halen sounds like Alex Van Halen, and those are the things that I really like to dig in and hear, listen to.
And again, it's this archaeology that we talk about here on this channel that we love doing too amongst friends. We're fans, and it's a shared respect in the archaeologies that we share and our experiences, Brodie. We had DK on yesterday. He's a young guy, from Louisiana. Please go and watch the video. It's hilarious. He's so honest and upfront about especially the part where he's going through his James Brown phase of growing his hair, and it's hilarious. Anyway,
Yeah.
it's hilarious. But he revealed something, I'm sure, that's going to blow you away. So he's a young guy. He discovers the guitar. He hears something in BB King. So he goes and he gets every video on YouTube of BB King playing from 68 to 82, that period. He downloads on a flash drive and he plays it through his PlayStation. So he's watching and listening. Yeah.
That sounds funny.
Yeah. He's watching, Brodie, and he's listening, and he's teaching himself to play, by what he's hearing, but he's watching. So he finds himself becoming a bit of an expert on the gear of BB King. He's looking at the amps, he's looking at the back line, he's watching, he's looking at what the bass player, he's finding himself becoming an expert on this to the point now where that when he goes to the BB King Foundation, people recognise him now as a bit of an authority, arguing with people. Some people are saying that he's not using a Y cable for a stereo on this gig, and he's saying yes, he is. And they say no, no, and he's saying I've seen video footage. There's video footage of him using a Y stereo cable into a Fender, into the Fender reverb amp So don't you love that?
Yeah, especially somebody his age. To be that young and to be interested in call it the beginning, the primary guy, one of the primary guys, to go back to that era of the BB King, live at the Regal kind of BB King. So hats off to him, to be that young and inspired by the origins of it all.
So I did the show with them. I did a few little bits and pieces, and guess what? I spent the evening. I was listening to BB King for 3 hours, and I'm sitting, no wonder this guy is considered one of the three kings.
Yeah, and there's something, there, especially like that Live at the Regal album. That's a reset record. Every once in a while, just put that back on, and it's like everything just sort of calibrates again. For me,
yeah. And I agree with you. And we spoke about that too, Brodie. You'll remember, won't you, when BB King passed away and Eric Clapton used his own initiative and went on social media, and what did he recommend that we all did after we watched his short clip? He recommended we all go and do something.
That's right. It was a very somber statement that he made, that BB King had passed, and it's like he had almost kind of given up. Like, I guess this is, music's becoming a thing of the past. But you're right. He had suggested listen to Live at the Regal in that eulogy, kind of statement or whatever it was. You're right. And one of my the most, because Clapton doesn't get real animated. It's like you're not going to see him. He does the song and he does it. But there are two performances, that I can look at where it's like he is really excited, and it's it was sort of like wow, look that he's and one was that Live at Hyde Park video that he did. Where he had the leather jacket on and came out, played acoustic, and played the one of the blue. I don't know if it was a Midnight Blue or a Mercedes Blue Strat in that, but his cover of Every Day I Have the Blues in that recording, it's like they're going, and I would love to know this, but not only in the song is he just absolutely nailing it, but it's like he turns around to the drummer, and all of a sudden he just like, he kind of, does this, has this big smile, kind of comes back up and just starts going. And I wonder if they really planned to extend it like that, or if he was just so into it, he turned around and said, let's keep going. I'd love to know that. And the other one was, might have been the last Crossroad video when they played Got to Get Better in a little while. And the Do It Tonight, say a prayer for me, I'm going down, say a prayer, do it tonight, do it today, do it, or don't do it tomorrow, don't do it today, but do it tonight. It was like he was on fire, and that's not really, those were just two interesting points that stuck out to me, but especially the Every Day I Have the Blues on that BB King thing, when he played it that night in Hyde Park, it was like, wow.
That Hyde Park DVD is one of my favorite. He's playing that red
335.
35. Oh my gosh, my gosh, what a great production that DVD is. My gosh.
Yeah. Because I mean, I don't know. It was those are two ones that I always go back to, and then I always regret this. And I had a chance to do it with actually with PJ from from PJ and the Beard. It was when I was in college, and the Nothing But the Blues tour came through. We were in Pennsylvania, and Pat was going to Philly to go see that show. And me being the the nerd that I am, I'm like, I gotta study. I have to. I didn't go to that show. Missing that tour was about as epic of miss as not having seen Stevie Ray Vaughan, for me. But because when he would play like Tore Down, any Freddie King thing that he does is like he's the fiery king, for me on those songs. And I always loved when he would play, those. But I didn't see From the Cradle tour, and I kick myself for that every time.
What's Clapton's favourite solo? He loves Freddie King's.
Hideaway.
No. Oh, gosh, it's on the tip of my tongue. It's the short solo on. Gosh, I can't believe I can't. Hold on. I'll find it while we're talking. You talk and I'll find it.
Talk amongst yourself, huh? I'll give you a word.
Going down.
Okay.
Yeah. So Clapton said somewhere when I say recently, like within the last 20 years, that short solo is one of his favourite solos ever that he loves. Yeah. He loves hearing. I'm glad that you mentioned Freddie King, because his interpretation of Freddie King through his whole career has been epic, Brodie.
Yeah. When he goes to Freddie Kingville, I get really excited. There's just fire in those songs too. I mean, BB's a little, he's a polished, more polished, more of a, dare I say it, even like, he's a gentleman, whereas
sure.
Freddie King, and then Albert King was, kind of his own thing too, but Freddie was the rawest of them all, and probably the most fiery, and just his style. He was the most aggressive of all those players, where I would say Albert, especially BB, had a finesse to them, like the vibrato, and so there was an energy in the Freddie King stuff that I think is easy to get pumped about and do.
I agree with you. And I'm just looking at the time here, folks. I agree with you, and I'm just gonna open this comment up in preparation for the next time when Brodie and I get together, when we're going to be talking about Clapton. But I think Brodie's going to be on the channel when we're going to be hanging out with Hoss anyway. So you're going to see Brodie before we get to talk about Clapton. But get to the point, Andrew. The Freddie King thing that you made, the connection that you made, I think is really, really interesting, because some people have said to me that Clapton on the Bino album, that fiery solos, the fiery stuff that he's doing, it's because he's this angry young man. He's this angry young man, and I sympathise with that appreciation or that approach to an understanding of what Clapton was doing on that album. Mm-hmm. But you know what? I just think he was just channeling what he thought was Freddie King. He was just playing, because he mentions it in his biography, doesn't he? That Freddie King was the guy for him at that period. Yeah. And in fact, that's why he got the Les Paul, didn't he, Brodie?
Yeah, because he bought that burst. Clapton got the burst because he, what he had seen on the cover of one of the Freddie King records was Freddie with a gold top and P90s in it. But he saw this one, is like, well, that's a Les Paul also, and I always love to hear him, refer to some of these guitars. He would talk about him being like a grown-up guitar or proper guitar or a man's guitar, and not from a gender perspective, but just from a, not some teenage kind of instrument. But when he saw these guys, it was a Martin or a Gibson, or whatever. Yeah. But you're right, that early 50s gold top with the P90s is what made. So maybe Freddie King's the guy that started the whole burst. The burst started with a gold top.
Yeah,
Who
yeah,
knows?
yeah, 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 yeah,
Write a
yeah,
thesis
yeah, yeah.
paper on that.
And folks, you know, even, you know, we buy guitars because they look cool. Clapton bought that guitar because it looked it looked like, as Brodie said, you know, looked like the guitar on an album cover. So yeah, I'm going to take it. We've got Bent Tom in the chat. Haven't seen you for a long time, Bent. Love you too, bro. Thank you for joining us. Really, really appreciate you popping in. Hope you're doing well, brother. Guys, it's been a pleasure hanging out. I know Brodie's got some. You got some music that you got to get together, that you got to sort out for tomorrow, brother. I understand. You got a set list or something that you've got to organise.
Yeah, actually they send them to you for just playing in church in the morning. You know, that seems to be the regular. That's the regular musical discipline. You know, every week or basically
Fantastic.
every week. You know, you get 4 or 5 songs, and you get the. You know, you sit down and you figure out who else is going to play and what the songs are, and if there's another guitar player, what you think they're going to play. So you show up a Fender because they're playing a Gibson, or you just take a Gretsch and know it's going to fit, or do you, you know, it's a fun, it's a great discipline, you know, to always have that to make it work, you
Sure.
know, like to make it not just to sit in your, you know, music room and noodle for an hour, but to have a specific agenda to
Yep.
deliver specific songs and learn all the parts on those to then show up and figure out, do you play it exactly like it is, or do you learn what liberties you might be able to take, but then also literally show up and you may be playing with people you've never met before and trying to make that work. That's nerve-wracking and exciting at the same time. So
and folks, I just want to tag on what Brodie said. You know, what we do here on this channel, it's like a gig. We prepare for it too. So, you know, Brodie and I knew that we had this coming up a couple of weeks ago. I fired off a couple of things to Brodie, and I only asked one question. But at least we were, you know, at least we have some kind of roadmap of where things might go. Should there be no space between Brodie and I talking, which probably will never happen.
Yeah, I doubt it.
Look, it always helps too, doesn't it, brother, when we've got people in the chat, wonderful people in the chat contributing and hanging out and spending a bit of time with us too, doesn't it?
Oh yeah, yeah. And you know, this time I haven't been able to see like who all's in there. You know, but I you know, knew like Jim was there. I'd look forward to, you know, hear from him and all the regulars, you know, Simon and, you know, Holly, and, you know, now we got, you know, some new folks in there that this community is really a lot of fun. I mean, there's a camaraderie here that I just straight away, it's like, wow, I love all these people, you know, and just all the back and forth. So I'll go back and listen to all the shows, and it's like you can just tell everybody speaks the same language.
Well, thank you for the nice words, Brodie. It means a lot to me and everybody. And thank you, One Boogie Boy and Jimmy Ray, for your kind words. We're just guys, we're just fans, music fans, along with everybody else. And if anybody wants to come on and hang out with us on a future show, let me know. If you want to come on and be specifically on a show with Brodie, let us know. Flick Brodie a message. Like I say, we're going to do, Brodie and I are going to do something semi-regularly. And the first show that we're going to do together, we're going to deep dive from some personal experiences and reflections on the Bino album. And I do look forward to that because I love that album. I never get sick and tired of talking about that album. And that's going to be our foundation for where we're going to go. We're going to probably talk about the Journeyman era, which was always important. I see Hugh Caldwell made a really, really good comment in the chat, Brodie, about the Nebworth gig where Clapton's wearing that pink suit and it's windy and he's playing through those Soldano amps.
Oh yeah, they're with Mark Knopfler, right? Is that the
Yes.
show? Yeah, yeah, and yeah, that whole I never understood the importance of those Soldano amps to that era. I didn't understand it at the time, and now it's like, oh, that was a thing, you know?
Yes. Yeah, it was a thing. Yeah, definitely. And you know, again, it's what we love doing here. You know, we're gonna talk about that. And but Brodie will be on. If you want to catch up with Brodie on the channel, he's going to be on. Like I say, we've already got that show locked on with Hoss. It's around about this time. It's going to start about this time in a couple of weeks' time. So, Brodie, if you want to jump on and hang out with us, Hoss is going to be talking about the Melbourne Guitar Show. Last year, Hoss and his band played all of Van Halen 1. So I forget the album, the Malmsteen album that they're doing. Forgive me. I can't remember.
Rising Force, maybe?
I can't remember. Gosh, forgive me. I'm not going to say it. Somebody in the chat might know. So Brodie will jump on and hang out with Hoss. We'll have John Conklin on, and we'll have Jimmy on, and that's going to be guaranteed fun too. Trust me.
Yeah, it's so much fun to hear all these. Everybody's got their own little, like there's this common language, of all of, whether it's Van Halen or the British blues or whatever, but everybody in this community's got like their own little dialect. We all speak the same language, but we've got a different accent on it. And and I'm curious to hear some deeper dives on on some of the other guys, because I've got a whole like this I've got this fascination with 38 Special,
Wow.
and all those, and especially those Southern rock guys, that I'm curious to hear somebody else bring that up and go, I love the whatever, because then here you got Dwayne Allman in Layla, and it all just sort of comes back together. But that there's everybody's got their own little thing that they went out and found while they were all on the same path. And there's one thing is, in all the guitar communities, I have yet to have people geek over 38 Special like I do. Everybody goes, oh yeah, Hold On Loosely. But then you start thinking about all the songs and all the guitar work in there, that it's to this day, it makes me want to play. There's as much of that in my playing as there is, George Harrison or Clapton or some of the early staples of things. So I'm curious to hear what some of the other guys do.
Well, I'm going to give you an invitation. You're going to pick a 38 Special album. We're gonna pick a day. It might be a little bit later for you, and you can be a guest, and you can come on the ranking of the tracks, and you can lead us on a ranking of the track of a 38 Special. I'm going to give that invitation to you.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. That's fantastic. That's perfectly up our alley. You pick the album. We'll pick the date in the future, and you can come on and hang out with the Rock Professor, myself, and Brad, and you can introduce the album, and we'll rank the tracks. What do you reckon?
Yes, and I assume the greatest hits albums don't count, right?
No.
Yeah.
You're on to it. No,
that would be great. Thank you so much.
Look, I certainly look forward to that. And Simon's in. Holly's yeah. There's a lot of people that are okay. So yeah, fantastic. You picked the album. You got the show. You got the gig.
There's my audition, huh?
So. But look, I agree with you. I think what Brodie said about dialects is an interesting concept. And I'll be honest and upfront with you guys. Simon Hosford, when he came on to the 5150 show, he helped Brodie build the channel. He brought subscribers to the channel, And we always said to anybody, if you ever want to take advantage of the channel and talk about any project you have upcoming, we're happy to do that. And that's exactly what we're doing. We're happy to talk about Hoss's upcoming project, to help promote it, take advantage of the interactions that we have, the networking of social media. That's, Brodie, that's what we do.
Yeah, yeah. Is he going to play a scallop fretboard Strat on the
He's gonna talk, or he's gonna have all that. Yeah, he's gonna show it all.
Yeah, nice. And I don't want that to sound like I'm an expert on that, because that kind of that neoclassical guys, Malmsteen and even Steve Vai and all that. That is so not my. I could never begin to do that. But even Satriani and those guys. But I always paid attention to it and admired the guy. Like that was the other player's dialect. They loved those guys, and that's the fun part about this is, when you bring a band together, you have a project, people even think about that. Like, let's play this and let's get, Hoss because he's got that Malmsteen thing, or Jimmy because he's got the Van Halen thing. There's always the common thing, but then they bring this, they put their seasoning on it.
Yeah. And look, I'm not going to pretend to be an expert. I don't know anything about neoclassical, so I'm looking forward to hearing what Hoss is going to say in the couple of hours that he's going to spend, talking about this. I don't want to sound like I'm a know-it-all or anything like that, but I remember when Surfing with the Alien came out and some of my friends were saying, "Oh, check this guy out," and I said, "Oh yeah, I know about him." And they said, "How do you know about this guy? It's a new album." I said, he was playing with Mick Jagger on She's the Boss. "No, this guy can't play with Mick Jagger, you're wrong." And I said, yes he was.
Yeah. Well, in any of those, I remember the first time I heard it, it was my cousin. Again, I was talking about California earlier, and it was my cousin lived out there, and I learned so much, about music from him. And he was the guy that was playing Surfing with the Alien. And I remember asking him this. I said, "When are they going to start to sing?"
Yeah.
And I kind of too. I've got to have. There's got to be a song. I sort of get bored with these guys that'll just blow your mind, and I'll listen to them, but it's where's the. I sort of get. I don't have the context. When's it come back to a chorus, or when does it come back to a, or whatever, And I would listen over and over, and again, I talk about PJ from PJ and the Beard. There's so much stuff that I would never, ever have listened to if it wouldn't have been, being in musical projects with him. And a lot of it is like Eric Johnson. I probably wouldn't have paid a whole lot of attention to an Eric Johnson unless he was singing. And now it's like I'm mesmerized, by the guy and everything. I want to hear it. And then even like the jazz guys, like Pat Metheny or Andy Summers or those guys. That was his thing, and now it's like, well, I want to understand that. I'm probably not going to play like it, or be able to cover it, but I want to understand it. I want to know what it. I want to be aware of it.
Yeah, and just hang out with some cool cats and have a bit of fun while you're doing it.
Yeah, exactly. It's there's a takeaway from everybody on stuff, whether it's here or a song or whatever, because if you just went down your own path, you'd probably have one guitar, one type of amp, one kind of music, and everything else would become that's terrible and this is great, as opposed to being aware of all of it and finding your path.
Awesome. Ladies and gentlemen, it's been a pleasure hanging out with Brodie. Like I said to you before, Brodie is going to be back soon on the channel. He's going to present a 38 special album within the next 4 or 5 weeks, depending on his schedule. I do look forward to that too, and we're going to get together and we're going to talk about the Bino album. So plenty happening on the channel. Brodie's going to send me his social media links so that you can follow him. After I've had a coffee after the show, I'll make sure that I attach them to this video. Please go and find Brodie and share what Brodie's doing with your friends as well. I'm going to do a quick shout out to everybody in the chat, and then I'm going to give the last words to Brodie. Holly Lewis, thank you as usual, and we never get sick and tired of your contributions, and the way that you support the channel, Holly, is always appreciated. Thank you very much. Greg Roberts Tune, again, fantastic comments. Good to see you. Hobo Roadie, it's been a long time. Thank you for supporting the channel. I hope you're doing well. Christopher Live Sawa, another very good friend of the channel. Good to see you. Arvin Gaunt, been with us right from the start. From Canada, thank you, brother. Right from the start, a foundation member, thank you. Never, ever forget the support and kind words that you gave Carl and I and the Rock Professor. Thank you. Always appreciated. The Rock Professor is getting in from the gig. Get some sleep. We need you on your A game, Rock Professor. We had Jimmy Ray Hawkins here hanging out with us. Jimmy V was here. Bent, good to see you, Bent. Always a pleasure. I'm going to go all the way up here. I don't want to miss anybody. I don't want to miss anyone. If I do, I'm going to be upset. Nelson Rodriguez, good friend of the channel. Thank you for your support. Thank you for becoming a channel member. If you want to support the channel, think about becoming a channel member. We'd appreciate that. We want to have some giveaways too later on the channel. That's always been a goal for us. We've given away a couple of t-shirts last year, something that we want to do a little bit more for you guys. One Boogie Boy, thank you for the nice words and the nice comments. PJ and the Beard, there he is. Go and support PJ and the Beard. I think that's about it. Janice Lala, she was here. And Hugh Caldwell. Jazzmaster 202, thank you for hanging out with Brodie and I. And Bob Schaffner, thank you. Brodie, I'm going to give you the last words, brother, and I'm going to let you prepare for the gig tomorrow.
My last words are some of the first ones I said earlier on. I'm really grateful for this community and everybody in it, and thank you, just for that camaraderie and that support of everybody and each other, and just, and Andrew, thanks to you for this, being the mayor of this town, thank you.
Well, thank you for the nice words. And as I say, best show on YouTube, fellas. Thank you, Jimmy. You're part of it. Jimmy's part of it. And, Jimmy encourages and inspires so many people. So we do look forward to hanging out with Jimmy, don't we? Thank you for the kind words. And thank you, Brodie.
If nobody's already nicknamed him this, he should be called Top Jimmy.
Top Jimmy. That is it.
There you go.
You've done, Matt. Now you've done it.
But
Top
I'm
Jimmy.
Sure that's the first time he's heard it. But he should be Top Jimmy.
So I'm going to let you guys know this is what I can do here on the channel. So when Jimmy comes in, he doesn't know I can do this. He's not going to do that. But so for I can go here, and I can go. I can do that. You see, I can put a description under your name. So it's going to be Top Jimmy.
He's going to be Top Jimmy. Jim is Top Jimmy.
Thank you, Brodie. Thank you, brother. Sometimes you need a clever person to point out the bloody obvious, don't you?
Captain Obvious, they call him. So.
Oh my gosh. Gretch Zeppelin is here too, another great friend of the channel. We're going to go. Thank you, guys.
Bye all.